to see you again in my compound and my entire life.
You are a disgrace to the entire womanhood. I regret being with you
For life!
A pregnant woman was chased out of her home. The man she met next became her miracle. She ran into the night, clutching her belly and her last shred of hope. Not just any woman. A pregnant wife chased out of her own home by the man who promised to love her. A man who swore the child growing inside her was a mistake, a burden he refused to carry. She wasn't supposed to leave that night. He didn't know she had heard every cruel word he whispered to another woman. She thought she had married a protector, but what she saw and what she heard shattered her completely. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ocean of Tales. Kindly like, comment, and subscribe on this channel. We will be notifying you when we drop a new video. Don't forget to tell us where you are watching from. Now she's not just a pregnant woman searching for shelter in the dark. She's a mother fighting for the life inside her. And the man she meets next, a stranger with nothing to gain, will step into her story at the exact moment she is breaking, becoming the miracle she never believed she deserved. Because sometimes the people who save us are the ones we were never meant to meet. Rain lashes against the windows as she moves quietly through the hallway, her hand resting protectively on her swollen belly. The house feels colder than usual, shadows stretching long across the tiles as though the walls themselves are bracing for a confession. She pauses when she hears a soft murmur, her husband's voice, low and secretive, drifting from the living room. She inches closer, each heartbeat louder than the storm outside. And then she hears it, the sentence that slices through her chest like a blade. A sentence that changes everything. She is frozen, but the night is just beginning. She steps back instinctively, her fingers trembling around the edge of her wrapper as her husband's laughter mixes with a woman's voice. The sound crashes into her like a wave. The betrayal she thought impossible suddenly becomes the truth she cannot escape. She tries to breathe, but the air feels thick, heavy, poisonous. With every passing second, more words spill out. Words about the unwanted baby, the regret he hides from neighbors, the life he wishes he had without her. Her stomach twists painfully, but she cannot look away. She knows this moment will scar her soul forever. She turns to leave quietly, hoping the darkness will swallow her grief before it swallows her. But the wooden floor creaks beneath her foot, snapping the fragile silence. Her husband storms toward the hallway, his face tightening at the sight of her swollen eyes and shaking body. A sharp flash of rage crosses his expression, rage born not from guilt, but from being caught. He steps closer, towering over her, pushing her backward with words sharper than fists. Fear coils around her spine as he accuses her of spying, of being dramatic, of trapping him with a child he never wanted. His hand jerks forward, not in a strike, but in a shove strong enough to send her stumbling against the wall. Pain shoots through her abdomen as she clutches her belly, her breath shattering into pieces. The woman behind him watches with a smirk, her presence twisting the knife deeper. Her husband shouts, calling her weak, calling her foolish, calling her the reason his life feels suffocating. The words rain down mercilessly as thunder cracks overhead. She realizes in that moment the man she once trusted has become the storm she must run from. And fast. She grabs her small handbag, empty except for a few coins, and makes for the door, hoping he will let her leave without another blow. But he follows, still hurling insults, still trying to crush the last pieces of her spirit. When she reaches for the bolt, he yanks the door open first, shoving her onto the wet steps with a force that steals her breath. The cold night air engulfs her instantly, the rain hitting her skin like needles. Behind her, he mutters that she should not return, that the child she carries is better off without him. She stumbles into the street, the rain soaking her wrapper and chilling her bones. Her feet slip against the wet pavement, her body struggling to balance her unborn child. The wind howls through the quiet neighborhood, rattling doors and bending trees as if nature itself mourns with her. She glances back only once, seeing the silhouette of her husband closing the door, locking it, sealing her exile. Lightning flashes, momentarily illuminating the emptiness around her. She wraps her arms tightly around her belly, whispering a promise of protection she's no longer sure she can keep. The night swallows her. As she begins to walk, each step is heavier than the last, fear clawing at her chest. Her contractions grow sharper, warnings she cannot ignore. Her vision blurs from tears and rain until she can barely distinguish one house from another. The world feels too big, too dark, too cruel for a woman carrying a fragile life alone. But beneath the fear, a quiet determination awakens. She must survive this night. She must. She pushes forward, unaware that somewhere ahead, a pair of headlights is about to cut through the darkness and alter the path of her life forever. Cold rain splashes against her bare feet as she hurries down the deserted street, each step sending a jolt of pain up her spine. She pulls her wrapper tighter around her body, but the wind claws it open again, exposing her trembling skin to the night. Cars pass in the distance, their headlights smearing across the wet road like blurred promises she cannot reach. Her breath comes out in short bursts, fogging the air. The child inside her shifts painfully, reminding her she is not alone. She quickens her steps, unsure where she's going, but certain she must keep moving. She presses her palm against a wall as a sudden contraction grips her abdomen, sharper this time, slicing through her with terrifying precision. The pain steals her breath for several seconds, forcing her to bend forward, her fingers scraping against the rough cement. She tastes salt, whether from rain or tears. She cannot tell. When the contraction eases, she straightens slowly, her legs trembling like newborn branches in a storm. Fear pulses through her veins. Is it too early? Is her baby in danger already? The questions spool in her mind, but the street remains cold, empty, and merciless. A pair of teenagers walk past her, their laughter echoing through the night. She lifts a shaking hand, hoping they might stop. They glance in her direction, eyes widening at the sight of her soaked wrapper and swollen belly, then quickly look away. One whispers something, and they hurry off, leaving her in the rain. She watches them disappear, her heart sinking deeper than the puddles around her feet. Once again, she sees the truth she has been avoiding. When people sense brokenness, they often run. She steels herself, swallowing the disappointment. She must move, even if the world ignores her. She crosses into a dimly lit street, illuminated only by flickering street lamps that buzz like tired insects. A stray dog watches her from a distance, its eyes glinting with something between curiosity and pity. Her footsteps splash through shallow puddles, marking a trail she hopes no one dangerous will follow. Thunder rolls overhead again, louder this time, shaking the branches of an old mango tree beside her. The air thickens, heavy with the scent of wet earth. She wraps both arms around her belly, whispering a silent plea to the child inside, not for strength, but for time. As she approaches a junction, a car slows near her, its engine humming softly. She freezes, unsure whether to hope or fear. The tinted window rolls down just enough for her to see a man's silhouette. He stares at her, expression unreadable. Her pulse quickens as he scans her from head to toe, lingering on her belly. For a moment, she thinks he might offer help. Instead, he scoffs, shakes his head, and drives off, splashing muddy water across her legs as he accelerates. She stumbles back, humiliation burning through the cold. Trust feels like a luxury she can't afford anymore. Her contractions come again, fiercer than before. She grips a metal gate, her fingernails scraping against it as pain ripples through her entire body. Rain drips from her chin, mixing with sweat as she gasps for air. She forces herself to count her breaths, to study the chaos inside her. When the pain loosens its grip, she tries knocking on the gate, desperate for shelter. No one answers. Lights flicker inside, but no footsteps approach. She rests her forehead against the metal, feeling its chill seep into her skin. She knows she cannot stay here. The night is pressing her forward. She steps back onto the road, lifting her face toward the sky as another rumble of thunder rolls across the horizon. Her vision wavers. The world blurs into streaks of yellow lamps and dark silhouettes. She wonders how much longer her body can endure the storm, inside and out. Then, through the roar of rain, she hears it, the distant hum of an approaching engine. The headlights slice through the darkness, growing brighter, closer, steadier. She squints through the downpour, her heart tightening. Something about this car feels different. It isn't speeding past. It's slowing down, heading straight toward her. She steadies herself as the rain eases into a cold drizzle, giving her a moment to breathe, just a moment. She moves toward a row of familiar houses, the same ones where neighbors once waved at her on sunny afternoons. She approaches the first gate and taps gently, hoping someone will at least speak to her. Curtains shift inside. A silhouette peers out, but the light snaps off immediately, plunging the room into darkness. The rejection hits harder than the rain ever could. She steps back, heart heavy, realizing that recognition doesn't always equal compassion. She tries the next house, knocking harder this time as another contraction pulses through her abdomen. Her voice trembles as she calls out, begging for just a dry spot to rest. Inside, she hears hushed voices, arguing, whispering, debating whether to open the door. She waits, clutching her belly, praying for mercy. Instead, the bolt slides into place with a loud metallic finality. The message is clear. She is a problem no one wants to inherit. She presses a hand to her chest, feeling her heart splinter beneath the weight of a world too afraid to care. She drags herself toward the small kiosk at the corner, remembering the woman who sells bread there, a woman she once helped during a market quarrel. The kiosk is lit, warm, welcoming from a distance. For a second, hope sparks. She approaches, calling the woman's name. But the shopkeeper's eyes widen in alarm as she steps closer, soaked, shivering, pregnant. Without a word, the woman reaches forward, not to help, but to pull down the kiosk shutter with a sharp clang. The light disappears. So does the last thread tying her to the community she once served. Crossing the road, she spots a security guard standing beneath an umbrella, scanning the street. Relief washes over her. Finally, someone with authority. She approaches respectfully, explaining through gasps that she needs a phone, a taxi, anything. His expression wavers between pity and fear. Then he shakes his head, stepping back as though her suffering is contagious. He mutters something about avoiding trouble and points her toward the main road, refusing to offer even the simplest help. The umbrella shields him, not from the rain, but from responsibility. She keeps walking, her vision blurring as exhaustion weighs on her like a second pregnancy. A group of women huddle under a shop canopy, gossiping about someone who left her husband in disgrace. When they notice her limp past, their whispers grow louder, sharper, slicing her already fragile heart. One woman covers her mouth, shocked. Another smirks. They step back instinctively, as if heartbreak were contagious. She lowers her gaze, knowing that gossip travels faster than truth, and tonight, it runs ahead of her like wildfire. A car approaches slowly, its headlights sweeping across her swollen feet and trembling form. She waves, praying the driver will stop. The car hesitates, just for a breath. She sees the driver's outline, a man gripping the steering wheel tightly. Hope rises. But then he speeds off, splashing a wave of cold water across her legs. The rejection stings, not because she expected kindness, but because she expected humanity. She presses her hand against her belly, whispering a promise that she will find help, somehow, before this child feels the world as cruelly as she does now. She steps beneath a flickering streetlight, her entire body shaking from cold and fear. The road ahead stretches into darkness, empty and merciless. For the first time tonight, she feels the terrifying weight of loneliness crushing her ribs. If the world won't see her, won't hear her, won't help her, then how long can she keep going? Just as she leans against a lamppost to steady herself, her knees buckle. She is falling, slowly, helplessly, until the glow of approaching headlights cuts through the night again. This time, the car doesn't slow. It stops. The car idles a few meters away, its headlights forming a halo of white light around her trembling body. She squints through the blur, rain, tears, exhaustion merging into one heavy fog. The engine hums steadily, not rushing, not retreating. For a moment, she fears it's her husband returning to finish what he started. Her pulse spikes, her breath tightening in her throat. But then the driver's door opens slowly, cautiously, as if the person inside is weighing every step. She braces herself, unsure whether salvation or danger is walking toward her in the rain-soaked silence. A tall man steps out, shielded only by a thin jacket that's already darkened by rain. His face is partially hidden beneath the glow of the street lamp. Beauty, she sees enough. Eyes that carry something heavy, something familiar, something broken. He pauses when he sees her belly, then her soaked wrapper, then the blood-stained edges where her feet scrape the pavement. His shoulders tense, as though her suffering stirs memories he's tried to bury. For a long second, neither of them moves. The storm between them is louder than the storm above. He lifts his hands slightly, palms open, a gesture of peace. "Are you okay?" his voice asks silently, because words aren't needed. His expression speaks loudly enough. She steps back reflexively, fear rising like a tide she can't control. The man freezes, realizing her distress is not personal but born from fresh wounds. He lowers his voice, softens his posture, and takes one careful step closer. Rain drips from his hair onto his cheeks, blending with the sadness in his eyes. He looks at her as if he knows what it means to lose everything in one night. A sudden contraction grips her stomach, bending her forward with a cry she can't swallow. Instinct overrides fear. She grips the hood of his car for balance, her fingers slip in G across the wet metal. He rushes toward her then. Not with threats, not with force, but with urgency and concern. He holds out his arms, stopping just short of touching her, silently asking permission. When she doesn't pull away completely, he steadies her elbows, helping her breathe through the pain. Lightning flashes overhead, illuminating their silhouettes like two wounded souls pulled together by fate. When the contraction eases, she tries to step back, but her legs wobble like they're made of water. He gestures toward his car, offering shelter from the rain. She hesitates, glancing toward the street, toward the world that just rejected her, gate after gate, door after door. Something in her chest urges caution, but something else, exhaustion, desperation, the faint flutter of her child, begs her to accept. He senses her battle and doesn't push. Instead, he steps away from the car door, giving her space, giving her choice. It's the first kindness she's been offered tonight. She slowly approaches the open door, peering into the warm glow of the interior light. The seats look clean. The dashboard holds no signs of danger. A faint scent of cologne mixed with rainwater fills the air, a scent that feels strangely calming. She places one hand on the edge of the door, still trembling, still unsure. The man watches her with the patience of someone who understands trauma too intimately. His lips part as if to say something, but he stops himself. Trust is fragile. If he rushes it, it will break. She finally nods, small, hesitant, but enough. He helps her into the front seat gently, as though she is carrying something sacred. When he closes the door, she exhales a shaky breath, her palms pressed against her belly. She glances at him through the rain-streaked window. He walks around the car slowly, his shoulders heavy with a story she hasn't heard yet. As he slides into the driver's seat, she notices his hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel. Whatever drove him to stop tonight, it wasn't pity. It was recognition. And the night is far from done revealing why. He drives slowly through the rain-soaked streets, glancing at her every few seconds as if afraid she might vanish between blinks. She sits stiffly, breathing shallowly, one hand gripping the seat as the other cradles her belly. The car's heater hums softly, warming her skin but not the storm inside her chest. Outside, the city lights smear across the wet windows like watercolor sadness.
She doesn't know who this man is.
She doesn't know why he stopped. But the alternative, wandering alone in the dark, feels too dangerous to reconsider. She knows this night isn't safe, but neither is turning back. When he pulls into a quiet compound, she feels a flicker of panic. The place is calm, guarded by tall hedges and a dim porch light. He turns off the engine and steps out at first, leaving his door open so she won't feel trapped. She studies the entrance, searching for clues about the life behind it. The iron gate is old but well-maintained, the kind only someone careful or lonely keeps polished. He approaches her side of the car slowly, offering his hand again, not touching her until she nods. She steps out timidly, unsure of what waits in the silence. The apartment is modest, smaller than she expected, but every corner carries a story. A baby crib stands by the wall, covered neatly with a soft blue blanket, untouched, undisturbed, as if waiting for someone who never arrived. A framed photograph sits face down on a side table, dust gathering around its edges. She notices small toys in a woven basket, their bright colors contrasting with the muted sadness in the room. She doesn't ask questions. She doesn't need to. Pain recognizes pain. And this room gently whispers a grief she can practically feel in the air. He moves around the apartment with cautious movements, picking up a few scattered items and placing them aside. He avoids the crib entirely. His silence isn't cold. It's protective, as if speaking might reopen a wound he barely managed to stitch shut. She lowers herself onto the couch, wincing as another wave of pain travels across her abdomen. He notices and brings her a clean towel to dry her face, then sets a cup of warm water beside her. His gestures are careful, almost reverent, as though he fears breaking something fragile, maybe her, maybe himself, maybe both. A sudden clap of thunder shakes the windows, and she flinches, pressing her hand to her belly. He turns quickly, watching her with a deep, worried intensity. In the soft lamplight, she sees it clearly now. The grief in his eyes, the heaviness in his shoulders, the kind of loss that changes a person's posture forever. He sits across from her, keeping a respectful distance but leaning forward slightly, ready to help if she asks. She studies him, realizing he is a man carrying a story as bruised as hers. And she wonders if this is why he stopped. She shifts uncomfortably, her wet wrapper clinging to her skin, reminding her of the humiliation she endured hours earlier. Shame creeps up her spine. She's in a stranger's home, soaked, pregnant, and fragile, yet somehow, this space feels safer than the house she fled. The contrast breaks something inside her. Tears spill onto her cheeks, uninvited and unstoppable. He stands immediately, unsure whether to comfort her or give her space. Instead, he kneels slightly beside the couch, placing a clean blanket within her reach. No words, no pressure, just presence. And somehow, presence feels enough. She wraps the blanket around her shoulders, her tears slowing as warmth settles across her skin. She glances at the crib again, sensing its unspoken story. Two broken souls lie in the same room, breathing the same heavy air, carrying heartbreak shaped differently but weighted the same. She feels the first flicker of safety, not trust, not comfort, but safety. A fragile seed in the darkest soil. As she sinks into the couch, exhaustion pulling her deeper, a single thought crosses her mind. Maybe this stranger wasn't sent to rescue her. Maybe they were sent to rescue each other. She wakes to the soft hum of the ceiling fan, her body heavy with exhaustion but strangely lighter in spirit. The blanket around her shoulders smells faintly of detergent and old memories. The stranger stands in the kitchen, his back turned, moving quietly as though afraid to disturb her rest. Morning light filters through the curtains, drawing gentle lines across the room. For a moment, she forgets the chaos of the previous night, until a sharp ache in her abdomen pulls her back into reality. She clasps her belly, fear whispering again. and he turns, instantly aware something is wrong. He steps closer, his face etched with concern, but he stops a safe distance away, giving her space to decide if she wants comfort or privacy. She nods faintly, and he brings her a glass of warm water, placing it carefully in her hands. The gesture cracks open the emotions she tried to hold back. Tears spill before she can stop them, sliding down her cheeks in trembling rivers. She tries wiping them with shaky fingers, but they keep coming. Her body curls inward, as though she can hide from her own sorrow. But sorrow doesn't hide. It demands release. He lowers himself onto the edge of a nearby chair, his posture open but cautious, as if he fears saying the wrong thing. His silence is not empty. It's attentive, gentle, giving her permission to fall apart without judgment. She cries harder, her breaths uneven, her shoulders shaking with each sob. She's crying for the home she lost, the betrayal she endured, the child she's desperate to protect, and the fear that she has nowhere left to go. Her grief fills the room like a rising tide. He lets it wash over him quietly, without retreating. Eventually, her sobs weaken, dissolving into quiet sniffles. She lifts her gaze and finds him watching her with an ache she doesn't understand. His eyes glisten, not with pity, but with recognition. The kind of recognition that comes from surviving a storm of his own. The weight in his expression makes her wonder what he has lost, what pain shaped the quiet gentleness he carries. But he says nothing. Some stories are too heavy for the morning light. Instead, he hands her a clean handkerchief, his fingers brushing hers lightly. Just enough to remind her she is not invisible. As she wipes her face, she glances again at the covered crib, and the silence around it suddenly makes sense. A father's silence. A man who once waited for tiny footsteps that never came. Grief recognizes grief, and now she sees it reflected in everything he does. The careful way he moves, the hesitation before touching anything, the softness in his voice. Their pain forms an invisible bridge, fragile yet undeniable. She feels her chest tighten, not from fear this time, but from the sudden understanding that he didn't save her out of charity. He saved her because he knows loss too. She tries to speak, but the words tangle in her throat. All she manages is a cracked whisper, thanking him for stopping when others didn't. He looks away briefly, jaw tightening as though her gratitude cuts deeper than any insult could. He doesn't reply right away. Instead, he reaches for a kettle and pours warm water into a small bowl, placing it beside her with a towel. His actions speak louder than anything he could say. You're safe here. You're allowed to feel. You don't have to pretend. For the first time in months, she believes it. She leans back into the couch, breathing more evenly now, her body settling into a fragile calm. He rises to his feet, giving her one last, reassuring look before returning to the kitchen. She watches him silently, realizing that the house no longer feels haunted. It feels shared. Not healed, just shared. Two damaged people learning to breathe in the same room. She presses her hand to her belly as her baby shifts gently, almost as if responding to the peace forming around them. But peace is fragile. And somewhere outside, the world still waits, ready to test whatever strength she is rebuilding. Morning sunlight creeps through the blinds, casting long stripes across the stranger's living room. She stretches slowly, her body still aching but her heartbeat steadier than the night before. For the first time in months, she feels a hint of safety, thin, fragile, but real. Meanwhile, across town, her husband paces their living room with a phone pressed to his ear. His voice is sharp, frantic, coded in fear disguised as anger. He didn't expect her to disappear. He didn't expect silence. And he certainly didn't expect the neighbors to start whispering long before he crafted his version of the truth. He storms outside, confronting a neighbor who watched him shove his pregnant wife into the rain. His questions are frantic, teetering between concern and defensiveness. The neighbor's expression stays cold, a silent reminder that people saw more than he wants them to recall. He fumbles through excuses, claiming she ran off in anger, that she's emotional, that he's trying his best to handle a difficult wife. The neighbor crosses his arms and steps back, unimpressed. The husband senses the shift. His control over the narrative is slipping, and desperation begins to simmer beneath his skin. He spends the rest of the morning calling family members, fabricating stories as quickly as they unravel. One relative asks why she left without her shoes. Another questions why he didn't call immediately. His frustration spikes, cracking his calm facade. He blames her for everything: her sensitivity, her unstable behavior, her supposed habit of overreacting. But with every lie he tells, he feels the walls closing in. He knows she heard the conversation last night. He knows she left because of him. And he knows she might find someone who believes her before he rewrites the story completely. Meanwhile, at the stranger's apartment, she sits quietly near the window, watching raindrops gather on the glass. Her stomach tightens, not from pain this time, but from fear of being found. She imagines her husband marching through the streets, knocking on doors, twisting the truth until it fits his pride. The thought makes her chest ache. She clutches the blanket around her shoulders, suddenly aware that safety is borrowed, temporary. The stranger senses her tension from across the room.
He doesn't ask why.
He simply brings her warm tea and places it gently in her hands, grounding her without a word. Back at the house she once called home, her husband rehearses his next move. He posts a message in the neighborhood group chat, painting himself as a worried, abandoned spouse. Some people respond with sympathy, others with skepticism. He hates the skepticism. It threatens his control. He deletes comments that question his behavior, blocks two neighbors who witnessed the argument, and begins crafting a narrative in which he is the victim. The more elaborate the lie becomes, the more terrified he grows of her silence. Silence, he realizes, is dangerous. It means she is somewhere safe, gathering strength. Her husband changes into clean clothes and leaves the house again, this time with a forced look of sorrow. He visits her friend's home, asking if she has been seen. The friend frowns, sensing something off. She remembers how dim the wife's eyes looked the last time she visited. She remembers the bruise she pretended she didn't see. She gives him no information. For the first time, someone chooses silence, not to protect him, but to protect her. He leaves in frustration, slamming the gate behind him, aware that the neighborhood's sympathy is no longer guaranteed. As the sun begins to set, her husband stares at his reflection in the mirror, the cracks finally visible beneath his practiced charm. He mutters to himself, convincing his own ego that he is losing G-control only because she is overreacting. But inside, panic gnaws at him like a slow-burning fire. He is not afraid for her safety. He is afraid of her truth. If she tells anyone what really happened, the image he worked so hard to curate will crumble. And somewhere across town, resting on a stranger's couch, she feels a faint chill, not from the room, but from knowing her past isn't done hunting her. Afternoon light filters softly into the apartment, warming the floor beside her bare feet. She sits quietly, her hands cradling her belly as if shielding her child from the memories rising inside her chest. The stranger sits at the dining table, fixing a broken kettle with patient hands. The silence between them feels heavier today. Not uncomfortable, but expectant, like the pause before a confession. Her thoughts drift backward, to the house she fled, to the man she once trusted. Pain curls inside her like smoke. She knows she must face the truth she ran from, or it will follow her here. She closes her eyes and sees flashes, her husband's smile in the early days, warm and open, the way he held her after their first miscarriage, the promises he whispered about protecting her forever. Then the shift. The subtle cruelty, the raised voice, the jealousy he disguised as concern. She remembers how he began blaming her for every setback, every financial struggle, every sorrow. She remembers shrinking herself just to keep the peace. And slowly, terrifyingly, she realizes that last night wasn't the first time he broke her. It was only the first time she refused to stay broken. A soft clatter pulls her back. The stranger has dropped a spoon, and when he bends to pick it up, she notices the faint tremor in his hands. Something about it mirrors her own inner shaking. She studies him quietly, sensing there is more behind his gentleness than politeness. Grief coats him like an invisible film, always present, always humming beneath the surface. The crib in the corner, the untouched toys, the turned-down photo, they begin fitting together like pieces of a sorrowful puzzle. She isn't the only one running from a past too sharp to look at directly. Driven by instinct, she speaks, softly at first, then with the steady rhythm of someone finally excavating buried pain. She recounts her miscarriages, her husband's bitterness, the slow W drip of emotional manipulation that convinced her she was the problem. As she talks, her voice trembles, but she doesn't stop. The stranger listens without interrupting, without flinching, without offering explanations for a story that isn't his to fix. His silence becomes a safe space, a permission she's never been granted, to be heard without being judged. And with every word, she feels something heavy lifting off her chest. When she finishes, the room feels eerily still, as if the apartment itself has paused to absorb her truth. The stranger's gaze drifts toward the covered crib, his jaw tightening. For the first time, he speaks, not with details, not with confessions, but with a single sentence heavy with grief. "You didn't deserve any of that." The simplicity of it cracks her open again. No excuses. No defending her husband. Just truth. Clean, gentle grounding. It's the kind of validation she never knew she needed until this very moment. She wipes her cheek slowly, realizing her marriage had become a story she kept rewriting to avoid confronting its ugliness. But now, in this quiet room with someone who has nothing to gain by lying to her, she sees clearly. She wasn't chased out because she was weak. She wasn't unwanted because she failed. She was abandoned because he feared her strength, feared the light still burning inside her despite everything he tried to extinguish. Truth is painful, but freeing. And now that she's named it, it can no longer hold her hostage. She leans back, exhaling deeply as her child shifts within her, almost as if responding to her clarity. The weight inside her chest feels lighter than it has in months. The stranger watches her silently, his expression softening with South OM ething close to respect. Two broken stories sit in the same room, yet neither feels shattered anymore. As evening shadows stretch across the floor, she feels a strange new certainty rising. She may not know what comes next, but she knows what she will never return to. And somewhere outside, her husband senses that truth too. Hoff, he doesn't yet understand what it means. Night settles slowly over the apartment, drawing long shadows across the floor as she tries to shift positions on the couch. A strange heaviness settles low in her abdomen, sharper than before, pulsing with deliberate intensity. She brushes it off at first, stress, exhaustion, maybe hunger. But when another wave of pain hits, stronger and more urgent, her breath catches. The stranger looks up from the chair where he's been keeping silent watch. He sees the fear flicker across her face, the way her hand clamps around her belly. Something inside him stiffens. The room is no longer calm. It is waiting. She sits forward, gripping the edge of the cushion as another contraction rips through her, slicing her breath into short, frantic gasps. Sweat beads along her forehead despite the cool night air. The stranger moves toward her with slow, steady urgency, kneeling beside the couch as though approaching a wounded animal in need of help but terrified of hurting her further. "Talk to me," his expression seems to say, yet words feel impossible. Her entire world narrows to the rhythmic clenching of pain. The baby isn't supposed to come yet. They are not ready. She is not ready. Her vision blurs as she tries to stand, but her legs buckle beneath her weight. The stranger catches her before she collapses, his arms firm yet trembling with fear. The contact jolts him like electricity, memories flooding back of the night he lost his own child, the frantic hospital rush that ended in heartbreak. His breath stutters, grief clawing at his throat. But when she cries out again, desperation snapping her posture, he pushes his trauma aside. There is no room for ghosts tonight. Only action. Only saving the woman fate placed in front of him. He helps her toward the door, supporting her with each faltering step. Her contractions grow closer, sharper, more insistent, like a clock ticking towards something irreversible. Rain pounds against the window S again, thunder rumbling low like a warning. She clutches his shirt, gasping through pain that swallows her voice. He fumbles with his car keys, hands shaking violently, fighting back a panic he thought he'd buried years ago. The image of a hospital hallway flashes in his mind. The echo of a doctor's voice saying, "We did everything we could." He nearly freezes, but her scream snaps him back. He lifts her into the passenger seat, buckling her in with trembling fingers. She grips the door handle tightly, nails digging into the plastic as another contraction twists her insides. The stranger sprints around the car, slams the driver's door shut, and starts the engine with a shaky twist of the key. The headlights cut through sheets of rain as he accelerates, tires hissing against the wet road. She squeezes her eyes shut, whispering silent prayers, desperate for her child to hold on. The stranger glances at her repeatedly, his jaw clenched. He cannot lose another life, not tonight. Traffic is sparse but slow, cautious drivers creeping through flooded intersections. He honks impatiently, weaving through with a controlled recklessness born not of anger but of fear. Each contraction pulls a cry from her throat, sharp and raw. Her breathing becomes shallow, erratic. He tells her, soft, firm, to breathe deeper, slower. She tries, but panic claws at her lungs. Water from the cracked window drips onto her lap, cold against her burning skin. When she suddenly goes quiet, he snaps his gaze toward her, terrified she's passed out. Her lips tremble. "Please hurry." It's the only thing she manages to say. The hospital entrance comes into view like a lighthouse through a storm. He jerks the car to a halt, leaps out, and scoops her into his arms before she can protest. Nurses rush forward, their faces shifting from routine calm to urgent focus as they see her condition. They take her from him gently but efficiently, wheeling her toward the emergency ward. He stands frozen for a moment, rain soaking his clothes, heart pounding like a war drum. The last time he walked through these doors, hope died in his hands. Tonight, hope is fighting to be born. And he doesn't know which outcome awaits on the other side of those doors. The waiting area buzzes with faint hospital sounds, muffled announcements, squeaking trolley wheels, distant beeping monitors. He sits rigidly on a plastic chair, his clothes soaked, his hands clasped so tightly the knuckles pale. Every minute feels like an hour. Then he hears hurried footsteps, a group of neighborhood women entering through the main doors, whispering in clusters. Their eyes dart around until they recognize him from the night before. Someone must have seen him bring her here. Within moments, soft murmurs spread across the room. For the first time since her exile, people are looking for her. One woman, the bread seller from the kiosk, steps forward timidly. She recognizes the stranger from earlier but hesitates before asking if the pregnant woman is safe. He reads guilt in her eyes, guilt for pulling down her shutter, for choosing fear over compassion. The stranger nods stiffly, offering no details. He isn't here for gossip or validation. The woman lowers her gaze, realizing the weight of her decision. Her regret ripples through the group, each woman recalling the moment they dismissed a vulnerable soul standing in the rain. Their whispers soften. Shame begins to settle like dust. Moments later, more neighbors arrive, some curious, some genuinely worried. The security guard from the junction walks in too, looking uneasy. He removes his cap and wipes his brow when he spots the stranger. "Is she okay?" he asks quietly. His earlier refusal suddenly feels unbearable in the fluorescent light of this hospital hallway. The stranger glances at him with guarded eyes before giving a slow, reluctant nod. The guard exhales, relief mixing with remorse. The community that once turned its back is now gathering, uncertain how to redeem themselves. The automatic doors slide open again, and her husband strides into the hospital, breathing heavily as though he ran part of the way. His shirt is wrinkled, his hair unkempt. Signs of panic he tries to mask. He scans the Rue M and spots the gathering crowd. Then he sees the stranger. Their eyes lock. Tension crackles through the air, sharp and immediate. Her husband approaches, wearing a rehearsed mask of concern. "Where is my wife?" his expression demands, though not out of love, out of fear. Fear of the truth, fear of exposure, fear of losing control. The crowd watches him with mixed expressions: curiosity, skepticism, judgment. For months, he controlled the narrative, weaving a public image of stability and care. But tonight, cracks widen. The bread seller whispers to another woman about the shove she witnessed. The security guard shifts nervously, recalling how he turned her away. A neighbor murmurs, "But I heard shouting last night." The husband hears the fragments, feels the shifting tide. His jaw tightens. The community that once believed him blindly is now seeing him through clearer eyes. And it frightens him more than losing his wife ever did. A nurse emerges from the maternity ward, holding a clipboard. The room falls silent as she announces that the woman is stable but under observation due to stress-induced contractions. Relief washes over the stranger so forcefully that he almost sinks back into his chair. The husband steps forward, demanding to see his wife. The nurse pauses, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly. "She requested rest and privacy," she replies. A subtle statement, a powerful implication. The crowd shifts, reading between the lines. The husband's mask cracks, revealing the frustration he struggles to contain. Whispers swell like rising waves. For the first time, the community sees the truth, not in her words, but in her absence, in her fear, in the stranger's steady presence, in the husband's unraveling composure. Their judgments begin to tilt in her favor, slowly but decisively. The stranger watches quietly, knowing this moment marks a turning point, the night she stopped being a shadow and became someone people finally saw. But outside the ward doors, her husband stands rigid, refusing to accept defeat. The story he spent years controlling is slipping from his grip, and he's preparing for a fight. The hospital corridor grows quieter as night deepens, leaving only a few visitors lingering on plastic chairs. Her husband stands near the nurse's station, arms crossed tightly, tapping his foot with agitation he can no longer hide. The stranger sits a few feet away, watching him with guarded calm. Every so often, curious eyes drift toward the husband, eyes filled not with sympathy, but with suspicion. The whispers he hoped to control have now transformed into a mirror, reflecting his cruelty back at him. He senses it. He feels it. And for the first time, he is in the center of the story. A group of neighbors approach cautiously, pretending to ask about her condition. But beneath their questions lies the truth they are piecing together. The pattern of shouting they've overheard for months, the sudden bruises she never explained, the way she faded into silence long before she ran into the night. Her husband forces a smile, spinning a tale of misunderstanding and emotion, insisting she has always been too sensitive. But the neighbors no longer nod blindly. Their expressions flatten. Their skepticism grows. His charm, once his greatest weapon, now feels cheap and transparent. Just as he begins weaving another excuse, a nurse steps forward, her voice gentle but firm. She explains that the patient asked specifically not to see him until further notice. The words hit like a slap. He tries laughing it off, claiming she's confused and stressed, but the nurse doesn't blink. "She was very clear," she repeats. Around them, eyes widen. The room shifts. Power shifts. For the first time in their marriage, her voice, not his, echoes louder. He feels the ground beneath him tilt, as if the universe is no longer willing to protect his lies. He storms outside for air, gripping the railing as rain starts to fall again. But instead of cooling him, it exposes him. Two men from the neighborhood walk past, whispering audibly about what he did. A woman from his street avoids his gaze entirely. The community he relied on to vouch for his respectability now questions his character openly. And every whisper chips at the armor he built, an armor crafted from arrogance, secrecy, and control. Karma rarely arrives with trumpets. Often, it arrives as silence, as people turning away, as truth finally finding ears willing to listen. Inside, the stranger stands near the vending machine, lost in thought. Nurses who witness the panic of the night begin to piece the story together. A pregnant woman in distress, a man who carried her through the doors soaked in rain, eyes filled with fear, not ownership. They notice how he hasn't tried to claim her, hasn't demanded rights, hasn't acted entitled. Instead, he hovers quietly, respectfully, ready to help but never imposing. Their glances shift between him and the husband. Comparison becomes conclusion, and conclusion becomes judgment. Her husband returns inside moments later, face tight, frustration simmering beneath his skin. He approaches the stranger with forced intimidation, hovering too close, trying to reclaim control through presence alone. But the stranger doesn't move. He stands firm, shoulders squared, gaze heavy with something the husband isn't prepared for: moral authority. Without raising his voice, without uttering a threat, the stranger's calm becomes a shield. The husband sees it, the community sees it, even the staff sees it, and quietly, unmistakably, the balance of power leaves him. When a doctor finally steps into the hallway with an update, everyone leans in. Her condition is stabilizing. The baby is safe for now. Relief washes over the stranger like warm Lee GHT. But her husband stiffens again, ready to reclaim his role. Before he can speak, the doctor adds another detail. Your wife said she will decide who enters her room. For now, she wants rest. The words echo through the hallway, sealing his defeat. Karma doesn't always destroy a man loudly. Sometimes it simply strips him of the control he wielded like a weapon. And tonight, in this quiet hospital corridor, he faces the consequences of every cruelty he thought would never return to him. Morning sunlight spills gently through the hospital blinds, warming the quiet room where she rests with her newborn pressed to her chest. Her breath rises and falls in soft waves, steadier than it has been in months. For the first time in a long time, her body is not bracing for the next blow. She studies her baby's tiny fingers, counting them slowly, letting each breath remind her she survived what was meant to destroy her. Outside her window, the world continues as if nothing happened, yet inside her, everything has changed forever. The stranger stands by the doorway, hesitant to enter fully, his hands tucked into his pockets, as if he is afraid of invading a moment too sacred for him. And she looks up and meets his eyes. There is gratitude in her gaze. Quiet, deep, and almost too heavy for words. He steps closer only when she nods. The air between them carries a softness neither expected, a calm born not from romance, but from rescue. He doesn't reach for the baby. He simply stands close enough for her to feel safe. Sometimes protection doesn't require touch, just presence. Later, when nurses carry the baby for routine checks, she sits upright and lets silence wash over her. In the stillness, she begins to see her reflection for what it truly is: not a broken woman, not a discarded wife, not a victim stumbling through darkness. She sees strength stitched into every scar, bravery hidden beneath every breath, resilience woven into her heartbeat. The stranger's help saved her life that night, but it was her own courage that carried her to this moment. And accepting that truth feels like reclaiming a piece of herself she thought she had lost forever. Her husband attempts one more visit, rehearsed apology heavy on his lips. But when he reaches the reception, he finds security waiting, instructed by the hospital to respect her request. She watches from her room window as he paces outside, frustration turning to disbelief, disbelief melting into fear. The world he controlled has shifted without him. The narrative he wrote no longer centers him. His attempts to rewrite history fall apart in the daylight, exposed by the strength she has finally found. Karma didn't just catch him, it walked past him and stood beside her. Community members who once whispered against her now arrive with fruits, blankets, soft apologies wrapped in careful words. She accepts the help, Not because she needs validation, but because she understands that healing is sometimes a shared effort. The same people who ignored her on the street now speak her name with respect. But she doesn't hold grudges, she holds lessons. The world didn't break her to leave her shattered. It broke her to reveal a version of herself she never knew she carried, a mother capable of rising from ashes with her child held high. Before she is discharged, the stranger walks her to the garden behind the hospital, where the air smells of clean grass and morning dew. They sit on a bench, quietly watching the sunlight dance across the leaves. He tells her, carefully, gently, about the child he lost, the grief he buried, the guilt he carried alone. She listens with the empathy of someone who understands heartbreak intimately. And in that exchange, something sacred happens. Two wounded souls acknowledge each other's pain and allow space for healing. Not promises. Not expectations. Just truth and possibility. Weeks later, as she steps into her new apartment, one provided through community support and the stranger's quiet assistance, she holds her baby close and feels something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The journey ahead will not be perfect, but it will be hers. And the man who helped her doesn't try to replace anything. He simply shows up when support matters most. He was the miracle she met that night, but she has become an even bigger miracle to herself. In choosing survival, in choosing motherhood, in choosing a new beginning, she discovers what she was truly meant to be, a woman reborn.